Welcome, Michael Cord.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief in terms of my presentation because I'm actually learning a lot about this case from people like Lynn Washington and others, so I certainly want to hear what they have to say. But as the lawyer here in the panel, I'm going to spend about 5 minutes talking about something that Pam Africa and I often talk about in terms of Mumia not only being legally not guilty, but also being factually innocent. And let me preface what I'm about to say in terms of this whole legal stuff with what I always say when I talk as a lawyer, and that's this. I'm not naive. I understand the racism and the classism that exists in America's criminal justice system. And I always say two things. One, that I'm not a lawyer who happens to be a black man. Instead, I'm a black man who just happens to be a lawyer. Why do I say that Mumia is legally not guilty? There's three reasons for that. One, there's a case called Batson versus Kentucky, a 1986 case which basically said you can't keep black people off the jury simply because they're black. Well, people like Lynn Washington and others can tell you what happened in connection with this whole thing. 10 of 15 peremptory challenges by the prosecution were used against black people. A peremptory challenge is where you don't have to say why you don't want somebody in the jury. You just say, I don't want that person on. It's supposed to be based on your feeling, your vibe. But how is it that that feeling, that vibe applied in regard to 10 of the 15 challenges the prosecution used? And that's why I say from a legal standpoint, there was a Batson violation, which shows one reason why Mumia Abu-Jamal was legally not guilty. The second argument, the prosecutor in his closing argument said something that every first-year law school graduate knows, and that is the jury decides the case, and they're the ultimate arbiter. They find the person guilty based on the evidence or not guilty. The jury cannot have passed the buck. They can't say, hey, I'm really not going to decide this right now. I'll just say guilty and let the appellate courts deal with it. Well, the prosecutor basically told the jury that it really doesn't matter what you do here because Mumia is going to file appeal after appeal. The jury is now thinking, okay, I really don't have to decide whether the prosecution proved this beyond a reasonable doubt because the appellate court will take care of all that. You can't do that. The jury is not permitted to think about what the appellate court is going to do. So when the prosecutor used the term appeal after appeal being filed by Mumia, that right there should have stopped the trial. That right there should have caused a new trial. So that's the second reason. The third reason deals with the judge, Judge Sabo. Many of us know about Judge Sabo and what he represents. And what he represents is horrible. I mean, here's a judge who, of 32 death penalty verdicts, 24 were reversed on appeal. How do you have such a horrible record as a judge that 32 persons who are found guilty and sentenced to death, of those 32, 24 are reversed? But even apart from that, in connection with Judge Sabo, I mean, here's a judge who even the appellate courts has acted improperly, has said improper stuff. I'll just spend the last 60 seconds saying the part about legally not guilty is based on Batson, based on the DA's closing statement, and based on the history of Sabo. In terms of Brother Mumia being factually innocent, one deals with the fact that a police officer exposed the lie that Mumia did not confess and did not say, I shot the MF and I hope he dies. That's number one. Number two deals with the ballistics. As the film showed, the first thing the police do in a shooting is check the hands of the alleged shooter for gunpowder residue, for paraffin. And I believe, like one of the commentators in the film, when the DA said that they didn't get any testing, I believe that was a lie. I believe they tested it, it was negative, and they did not want to report that. That's number two. And finally, the downward angle. In dramatic fashion, in closing argument of Mumia's trial, the prosecutor stood in the middle of the courtroom and showed the jurors how Brother Mumia allegedly executed the fallen police officer, shooting him square between the eyes, but that flies in the face of physics because Mumia's bullet wound that he sustained came from a downward angle, which means the person who shot Mumia was standing over Mumia. It's no way based on the physical proximity, the angle of the bullet wound Mumia sustained, that he could have shot anybody. So he's legally not guilty for the reasons stated, factually innocent, and I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Thank Thank you.